Welcome. My name is Valentine. I'm with the Radical Organizing and Activism Resource Center. I'm delighted to be with you all today. Welcome to the University of Oregon and to our 29th annual keynote presented by the Coalition Against Environmental Racism, Earth as a Relationship, Redefining Survival with Dr. Alexis Pauline Gumbs. Thanks for being here. I'd like to begin our keynote this afternoon with reminding us of where we are, whose land we are on, those who made this event possible, and the lineage of thought and resistance that this talk emerges from. I'm going to leave this land acknowledgement up here for each of you to read. I apologize, it's a little bit hard to see. If we get the lights, yeah. It's on the screens. I'd like to name and thank Professor Kirby Brown, the Director of Native American and Indigenous Studies, and many others for inspiring our approach to framing this talk through their work in bringing water protector Winona LaDuke to campus this past March. We begin with land acknowledgements here at the University of Oregon in order to remind ourselves where we are, what our responsibilities are in the places that we live and work, and specifically to publicly honor the long-standing and ongoing relationships that the Kalapuya people maintain to this place where we all find ourselves. We offer this land acknowledgement, which is developed in consultation with the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians of Oregon, to ground ourselves in our shared histories and remind ourselves in our institution of our responsibilities and obligations to advance Indigenous sovereignty, to prioritize Indigenous knowledge and lifeways, and to support Indigenous education and Indigenous students on this campus. Further, each of us here today have a responsibility to abolish our own colonial values and practices of exploitation and extraction, and carry with us a commitment to continuous unlearning and dedicated restorative practice. This begins with shifting towards ways of living and learning that have been long suppressed alongside the Indigenous people who first valued them, an orientation to the world centered around reciprocity and endless gratitude towards this land. We have a very long way to go, and we must do so humbly. I invite us not to leave this framing here at the beginning of the event, like we sometimes do, but to see and hear everything to discuss today through this lens, within the context of our shared history, our shared commitments, and most importantly, that in the Willamette Valley, and specifically here on the University of Oregon campus, you are on Kalapuya Ilihi. All that will be brought forward today has been born out of the activism, resistance, and ancestral knowledge of Indigenous scholars, Black queer feminists, decolonial theorists and practitioners, abolitionists, and all who have lived in opposition to white supremacy, colonization, and all oppressive structures. Before we get any further, I'd like to just say some thank yous to some folks. Hopefully you were able to see and meet some of our wonderful community organizations and campus organizations tabling beforehand. Thank you all for joining us. This is truly a community effort here in a time where such work and relationships are really needed. I also want to thank everyone it takes to get an event like this off the ground. Thank you to our dedicated organizing team that's met weekly since the beginning of this year, including Bella, Hannah, Alex, Yvette, Mina, Luna, Ruby, Dr. Herrera, Cole, Dak, August, Mohammed, and I'm sure more folks as well. It takes a team to do this type of stuff. I'd also like to recognize our friends here in the EMU, especially Kristen and Jeff and Emmy, and all of the EMU scheduling and event services folks on shift right now. We love you and couldn't do this without you. I'd like to thank Kyle here providing ASL interpreter support through the Accessible Education Center, and for all of the additional labor and care that went into this event. Let's give everyone a huge round of applause for all of that. And we're, of course, very grateful for the financial support of the Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies Department, as well as support of many other departments and organizations in promoting this event, many of whom are listed here. But this event has primarily been a collaboration between the UO Coalition Against Environmental Racism and the UO Radical Organizing and Activism Resource Center, CAER being on the left and ROAR being on the right. Two longstanding and incredibly impactful student organizations that have both contributed substantial financial and organizing support to today. I've had the privilege of working with both of these groups during my time here as an undergrad on campus, first with CAER in the fall of 2022, and now as a co-director of ROAR for the past year and a half. CAER was founded by students from the Rohr Center in 1994 as an intervention to the campus environmental movement, with a dual mission of educating the campus about environmental racism and also resisting this inequality locally, regionally, and globally. Since 1996, CAER has hosted an annual environmental justice conference on our campus each year, aside from 2 years amidst the pandemic when it wasn't safe to do so, making this the 29th annual environmental justice keynote. Traditionally, the conference has been made up of multiple days of events, panels, outings, but due to an increased focus on institutional change and international solidarity organizing on our campus the past few years, organizers have opted to consolidate the conference into just this single event to best meet the moment. It's really my pleasure to see an exceptional team of organizers now running CAER, and I look forward to the future of their essential and powerful work. The Rohr Center was founded in 1970 here at the U of O as the Survival Center, as a way to quell student unrest in the wake of the Kent State riots. The Survival Center has served as a physical hub and resource center here in the EMU for politically active student organizations, providing essentials, materials, and support for campaigns, mostly aimed at fighting environmental equality in the region. In 2015, we reformed the Survival Center into the Rohr Center, sharpening our focus to dismantling all systems of oppression, especially global racial capitalism, imperialism, colonialism, systemic racism, and heteropatriarchy. Today, we continue to strive to cultivate a university rooted in community, compassion, cooperation, and creativity, where students can collaborate, organize, and thrive politically and artistically, all together. It's been my honor to join in the rich genealogy of both these groups, and I think there's perhaps no one more fitting to speak at this occasion than Dr. Gumbs, calling us to redefine survival. Next up, I'd like to welcome Mina to the stage to talk a little bit more about our campus and introduce Dr. Gumbs. Thank you so much.
Does someone know how to do this?
It's that one. It's the second laptop.
No. Tech people will come eventually. Good afternoon. My name's Mina. I use they, them pronouns. I'm also an organizer with the Radical Organizing and Activism Resource Center. I just want to shout out the wonderful, wonderful team that put all of this past 6 months into organizing this, especially Hannah, who stepped up as my co-lead pretty early on without being asked to. That was really amazing. I've really never worked on a funner group project. They don't really exist very often, so I'm really glad for that opportunity. I came in as a freshman at the University of Oregon 1 week before October 7th, 2023, and the intensification of the ongoing Nakba against Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. Since that week, this campus has been a nonstop flurry of moving hands, rallying, marching, shutting shit down, building an encampment, bringing students and their families to Oregon from Gaza, going on hunger strike, and raising money for Palestinians trying to survive Israel's siege. We're constantly learning how to be with one another through crisis. In the midst of all this, we had to move to build safety for our community members being targeted by this federal administration. Last month, UO student workers were forced to go on strike for a fair labor contract, while the University of Oregon administration sent police after our marginalized comrades fighting for Palestine, and riot cops to a nonviolent sit-in. This administration has consistently prioritized outside elite interests to the detriment of students, faculty, staff here, and everyone in our global community. This is our university, and we've claimed it, and we've continually negotiated with this institution to make it livable for ourselves and each other, knowing that it is, in its current iteration, incapable of investing in our collective survival. What does it mean to go to school here? To go to classes every day, to survive here on this campus, on this land, or pay taxes in this country where our money is funneled into the unsurvival of millions of people? through genocide in Palestine, the Congo, Sudan, or the kidnapping of our community members, the abandonment of our unhoused neighbors? What kind of formations will we have to forge together in order to survive on this changing planet? How do we flock together as a species to shape change? I'm reminded that we have to hold the multitude of realities playing out in this moment. I know we're feeling the weight of incredible loss and failure and powerlessness right now, and I see us practicing new ways of being. We're becoming the future. Alexis Pauline Gumbs constantly reminds me that we are infinitely resourced from generations of warriors, survivors, and lovers before and after us. She reminds me of the legacy of Audre Lorde, in particular, who's offered us lessons in survival through her life's rigorous work. I want to ground us in one of Audre Lorde's most repeated poems, A Litany for Survival. For those of us who live at the shoreline, standing upon the constant edges of decision, crucial and alone. For those of us who cannot indulge the passing dreams of choice, who love in doorways coming and going in the hours between dawns, looking inward and outward at once before and after, seeking a now that can breed futures like bread in our children's mouths, so that their dreams will not reflect the death of ours. For those of us who are imprinted with fear, like a faint line at the center of our foreheads, learning to be afraid with our mother's milk. For by this weapon, this illusion of some safety to be found, the heavy-footed hoped to silence us. For all of us, this instant and this triumph, we were never meant to survive. And when the sun rises, we are afraid it might not remain. When the sun sets, we are afraid it might not rise in the morning. When our stomachs are full, we are afraid of indigestion. When our stomachs are empty, we are afraid we may never eat again. When we are loved, we are afraid love will vanish. When we are alone, we are afraid love will never return. And when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard nor welcomed, but when we are silent, we are still afraid. So I say this final verse. So it is better to speak, remembering we were never meant to survive. Again, let's say it together. So it is better to speak, remembering we were never meant to survive. Thank you. I encourage you, if you didn't get a chance on the way in, to visit some of the tables in the back and see if there are ways that you can get involved, make connections back there. The QR code behind me goes to a link tree compiled by the UO Gaza Hunger Strike, where you can donate to Palestinian families. We'll have it up again at the end as well. But yeah, let's get to it. It is so wonderful for me to be able to introduce Alexis Pauline Gumbs. They are a queer Black troublemaker, feminist love evangelist, and an aspirational cousin to all life. Her work in this lifetime is to facilitate infinite, unstoppable ancestral love in practice. Alexis identifies proudly as a queer Caribbean author and scholar in the tradition of Audre Lorde, June Jordan, M. Jackie Alexander, Dionne Brand, and many more. Their most recent book, Survival is a Promise, The Eternal Life of Audre Lorde, revolutionizes the scale of life writing. Her award-winning meditation, Undrowned, Black Feminist Lessons for Marine Mammals, offers the critical interspecies love song we need at this urgent stage of our collective evolution. She is also the co-author and editor of several other books, features in various podcasts, articles, and collections, and is a co-founding member of more than a few revolutionary BIPOC-led organizations. You can find her wonderful offerings on her website, which I encourage you to check out. All of Dr. Gumbs' work is grounded in a community building ethic and would not be possible without her communities of accountability in Durham, North Carolina, the broader US Southeast, and the Global South. Without further ado, please welcome Alexis Pauline Gumbs.
Hi. I'm so honored to be with you all. I don't want to say much more before we figure out the captioning. So just, here we are. Mina for that very powerful opening, Valentine for that powerful acknowledgement that we started with. Thank you, Yvette. Thank you for Alex. Thank you, August. Thank you for having me. I wanted us to start with some breathing. So I'll just encourage you to do what supports your breathing. It might mean putting some things that you're holding down. It might mean getting out of your chair. It might mean putting both feet on the ground. You might want to do a little stretch. And I am going to take 8 breaths. And I'm going to say inhaling when I'm inhaling and exhaling when I'm exhaling. Maybe to make it visual, I'll also just reach up when I'm inhaling and down when I'm exhaling. Okay, here we go. Inhaling and exhaling. Inhaling and exhaling. Inhaling and exhaling. By the way, you can breathe at your own pace. Inhaling and exhaling. Inhaling and exhaling. Inhaling and exhaling. Inhaling and exhaling. One more time, inhaling. Maybe a loud exhale. We are here. So, the next way that I would love us to continue to vibrate in the sacred space that you both opened here is through dedication. So I'm dedicating my participation today to my niece Penny. I told the people at lunch this. Penny is 6 years old. Penny is an interspecies being and is a fierce advocate that every life should be able to express itself in the infinite multiplicities of ways, which is something that brings me a lot of joy and gratitude. And I'm here because I want to honor the future that Penny may get to grow up in, if we are so blessed. And also because I want to bring just her fierceness and clarity. I just want to be a more fierce and clear version of myself in this moment. So that's my dedication. I want to invite you to share with a neighbor who is located near you your dedication. Your dedication can be to someone who is older than you or younger than you. Penny's younger than me. I know I might look 5, but I'm not. Sometimes I might act 5, but technically I've been here a little bit longer than that. Your dedication can be to somebody who is living now, like Penny, which I'm so grateful for, and it could be somebody who lived before, who's an ancestor. Really, your dedication could be to anyone of any species. My only request is like, choose one of the multitudes of loved ones that you could possibly choose. And please have it be someone who's not in this room with us right now that you know of. Okay, so with that, let's just take 2 minutes. Please turn to a neighbor in here, and if you don't know them, introduce yourself, and please share with them your dedication. Okay, so maybe 30 more seconds with your neighbor. I would like to say, of course, this is incredible technical skill and persistence, but also maybe the energy of the beautiful mini conversation you just had with your neighbor. So if you could say thank you to your neighbor. Miraculous. Okay, so I have some things to share with you. I'm so excited to be with you. And the first thing that I want to share with you is a poem called If All the Trees on Earth Were Pens. This is a poem for Luqman al-Najjar, and it comes out of, I've never shared this poem out loud before. It comes out of a process that I'm in, a personal early morning ritual that I'm in, that is my vigil in solidarity with the children of the world who are impacted by genocidal regimes that the United States is directly complicit in, and therefore that I am directly complicit in. As June Jordan said, coexistence with genocide is complicity with genocide. So this is a vigil that centers on the sacredness of the names of the children impacted. And there's poetry coming out of it. I'm not sharing all of the poetry. I did share the fact that I was doing this vigil because I do think that each of us could be creative about how we're personally in vigil, and how we bring that vigil into a scale that can be intimate and impactful for us, and not overwhelming and in a way that stops us from being able to be present to what grief is teaching us, to what love is asking of us. So Luqman al-Najjar is one of a family of children who died in Gaza as a result of an Israeli airstrike, along with their father and mother. Their mother is living. Their father has passed away in the same airstrike. They were our doctors who have been working around the clock, Palestinian doctors working around the clock to save the lives of other Palestinian babies who have been impacted by the same bombing and the campaign of starvation. So this is for Luqman. It has epigraphs from Surah 31, which is the Surah of Luqman, who is considered to be a wise elder in the Quran, who is giving advice to his son. Epigraph 1, Surah 31, verse 33. Beware of the day when no parent will be of any benefit to their child, nor will a child be of any benefit to their parent. Surah 31, verse 27. If all the trees on earth were pens, and the ocean were ink, refilled by 7 other oceans, the words of Allah would not be exhausted. Surah 31, verse 10. He crafted the heavens without pillars, as you can see, and placed firm mountains upon the earth so it does not shake with you. Look, man, we could empty the ocean, writing your name, and love would refill it. Instead, we boil the ocean for the privilege of forgetting you. Look, man, is there another path to wisdom except through you? When parent and child mean nothing that saves you, we are all your parents. We are all but children. Lukman the grateful, Lukman the humble, Lukman the fearful, Lukman the quiet, Lukman the hungry, Lukman the thirsty, Lukman the houseless. Lukman the mountain, Lukman the ocean, Lukman the heavens, without pillars to fall on you. Lukman, my pen is shaking in your name. Another deep breath. Two more. Earth is a relationship. We are all responsible for each other. I'm going to read you an excerpt from Survival is a Promise, The Eternal Life of Audre Lorde, which Lina mentioned. It is where I explain how I learned this idea that Earth is a relationship from Audre Lorde, from studying Audre Lorde. And so it kind of says a little bit about my approach to this quantum biography of her. My task is to follow Audre, who studied the earth and the universe closely from childhood through the end of her life, and to honor the fact that the scale of the poet, the scale of the life of the poet, is the scale of the universe. My understanding is that the way the earth shows up in Audre Lorde's poems is not merely a metaphor or a setting for her examination of human relations. Therefore, this biography considers what Audre considers and what organized her life: weather patterns, supernovas, geological scales of transformation, radioactive dust. Audre referenced the natural world in her poems not as a metaphor, but as a map for how to understand our lives as part of every manifestation of Earth. As Audre wrote in an open letter to the Black lesbian feminist journal Ashe, the Earth is telling us something about our conduct of living, as well as our abuse of the covenant we live upon. That's the end of the quote. We live upon the covenant. The planet is the covenant. Earth is a relationship, a promise. This understanding, crucial to our survival as interrelated living beings, is the only way we can understand Audre on her own terms. As a survivor of childhood disability injustice, a survivor of her best friend's suicide, a high school theorist of what it meant to survive the atomic age, a college activist against nuclear irresponsibility, a mother who knew poetry could help teach her children to survive in a racist world, and ultimately a cancer survivor who understood the war going on within her cells as connected to every struggle against oppression on the planet. Audre talks explicitly in interviews about how deeply the atomic age impacted her thinking. She was a young science fiction reader who grew up in Harlem, blocks away from the Columbia University tunnels where government-funded researchers invented the atom bomb. The question of survival on the scale of an entire planet stayed with her throughout her life. The students of those atom-splitting researchers would invent particle physics and theorize a quantum reality where the relation between time and space becomes clearly multi-directional, non-linear, and profoundly impacted by our noticing, For me, Audre had always been quantum, not only because she died before I met her, not only because she shows up in the lives and actions of countless devotees across space and time, but also, did it stop? Oh, what is happening? I'm not sure what the issue is, because I know they tested this multiple times too. So do we have an alternate access plan? Like a plan B? Okay, we're gonna try again. Should I then wait or continue?
I think you can go. We also have a recording going, so yeah.
Okay. Audre has always been quantum. Not only because she shows up in the lives and actions of countless devotees across space and time, including activists on this campus, but also because her theory of energy and the way she used her life force exceed a normative understanding of one life. So this is not a normative biography, linearly dragging you from a cradle to a grave. This is a book shaped by what Audre Lorde did as a reader and a writer and a mentor to change what a book can be, what a book can do. This is a quantum biography where life in full emerges in the field of relations in each particle. This is a cosmic biography where the dynamic of the planet and the universe are never separate from the life of any being. This profound connection is true for all of us, and we get to study the queer life of a being who knew it. As a poet, even in her prose, Audre sought to recode language toward a more life-giving set of relations with Earth. Identifying less as an individual than as a possibility, Audre offered multiple versions of her life as a map. In this biography, I work as closely with Audre's reading as I do with her writing, honoring her as a writer who held the work of other writers close, like I am doing now. I also read even the discrepancies between the historical Audre and the literary version of herself she offered the world as a cartography of longing, a rigorous commitment to bequeath future generations the possibilities we deserve. And following Audre's lead, I care more about well-researched wonder than I do about closing down possibilities through expertise. May this book, which centers Audre as a wonder of the world, increase your questioning, active wonder. Read this book as a survival guide, a point of connection through Audre's life to the most pressing questions about your own and our collective relationship to our shifting ecosystem. Read this book in any order you want. There's 58 chapters, y'all. Knowing it will reach you on a personal and a cosmic scale. Read these chapters like a collection of poems that speak in chorus in all directions. Understand each word as an opportunity for Audre's fierce love, which is the same love that birthed the volcanoes and split the continents, to reach you wherever you are. Okay, so let's take another moment. What's happening? Am I hypnotizing the machine? Is the sound of my voice when I talk for too long? Okay. Okay, so these are some reflections that are more recent. They're about our relationship as this planet. This first one is called Damn, spelled like that. And there might be, whatever machines are here doing this, work with us, please. Okay. If you don't pay that much attention to Jennifer Lopez, there might be a reference that you missed, but you'll be okay. Can you imagine this planet clothed in ice, embraced by ice, shaped by the slow movements of glaciers across continents? There is something glamorous about that to me, like Jennifer Lopez's character in Hustlers. I know, Ice Queen realness. But the closeness of ice, the slow, smoothing impact of centuries of solid flow, I fantasize about that feeling. And I'm not even a person who likes the cold, not even for its contrast. I can tell from my thermostat at home. And yet, and still, and not still, but imperceptibly moving, like mountains, I love that the surface of the earth got some of her curves from the slow roll of ice across miles and millennia. I too have grown beautiful exactly where you tried to freeze me out. I too wear ice over so many parts of my evolution, and now it's melting. Can you remember what it felt like when your frozen places became rivers? Did I stop again? Okay. Okay. Can you remember what it felt like when your frozen places became rivers, nurturing all kinds of life you couldn't have previously imagined? Do you remember when what was a weight became a rush and you greened all over? That's what my journey to turning 40 felt like. And now I know why Audre Lorde called herself a high priestess of 40 in that video after the Broadside banquet. Gratitude to Mary Lou Lewis, Michelle Citron, and the Lesbian Home Movie Project. Audre said she let go of all the pressure she had internalized about who she should be and what she should make happen and what other people thought. And baby, talk about prolific erotic inspiration. Talk about dreams upon dreams we still dream in. I'm so happy to know exactly what she means. And maybe that's why I have an issue with dams. Okay, stay with me. When I wrote this, I was staying in a hotel in San Francisco that had a note printed on the bottom of the mirror proclaiming the good news that we can drink the tap water because it comes from the Hetch Hetchy Reservoir and is the cleanest drinking water in the whole United States. And guess what? I love tap water. Our best way, beyond the scourge of single-use plastic water bottles, what usually fills my turquoise tumbler is tap water. And I come from public water legacies. As a part of the short-lived 1967 Angolan Revolution, my grandparents prioritized free access to clean water as a collective necessity. Decades later, my grandfather, who would have been 110 last year, still spoke of it as their greatest revolutionary achievement, that a poor child, like he had been, growing up in Anguilla, could go to the pump and get the water they needed on an island surrounded by salt. So why wasn't I happy to read the note on the bottom of the mirror proclaiming I could drink the tap water in this tall, tall hotel, which means they must have had to dig real deep to build it up this high. I've been drinking the tap water, even though strangely the hotel also gives out plastic bottles of Aquafina to guests for free. I'm angry because I'm gonna go into the present tense of that moment. I'm here in San Francisco, really only for a night on my way somewhere else, and I know how San Francisco has displaced its Black communities. I watched The Last Black Man in San Francisco like everyone else did, or should. And it just doesn't feel right to me that while the tap water in Jackson, Mississippi, and Flint, Michigan, and evidently one of the buildings on this campus, and too many more cities is poisonous sludge, this violent dream of a non-Black urban exception brags about having the cleanest drinking water. Of course you freaking do. While Oakland, which I could almost see from the hotel window, gets its water through old, poorly maintained pipes from the Sierra Nevada and East Bay watersheds, San Francisco gets its water from 187 miles away in the Hetch Hetchy Reservoir over next to Yosemite. And what is Hetch Hetchy Reservoir? A drowned valley, dammed up. Millennia ago, a glacier carved a most beautiful valley into earth. Cliffs and dramatic edges, a U-shaped curve in the land. And then when the glacier moved on and the ice melted, what a rich and fertile home for the people. The Sierra Minok, Yukut, Washoe, Western Mono, and Poet loved ones and more tended the valley in loving relationship for thousands of years. And then, the Manifest Destiny dream, fueled by the San Francisco gold rush, unleashed state-sanctioned genocide against the native people of this area, and in the mid-1800s, the settlers wreaked violence, including the Mariposa War. The greedy settlers invented laws that called the beloved people trespassers in their own homes. Was that enough? Was it enough to steal the land these communities had made more beautiful with their living? This place that the white conservationist John Muir called, quote, a great landscape garden, one of nature's rarest and most precious mountain temples? No. It is never enough in white supremacist capitalism. In 1913, adding more than insult to massive theft, the faraway city of San Francisco built a dam that flooded the whole valley, drowning countless species, so that 110 years later, this hotel can tell Jeremiah and Lydia Gumbs' granddaughter to taste the cleanest drinking water in America. Clearly, we do not have the same definition of clean. The next morning, I woke up with a start. Some weird rerouting of sinus fluid to the back of my throat had me sit straight up to keep from drowning again. And damn, maybe I should never have drank that water. Where is this damn nation, I meant with 2 M's, happening in my life? What ancient treasures am I flooding for convenience, directing water to wherever the gold reside? Who do I push out of my life because their love demands too much of me without even the good sense to love myself better in their absence? I only went to San Francisco because it's a gay mecca. But my queer Black life, they're having Creating Change, you know, the huge gay conference. But my queer Black life, and all the lives in other pink-washed sites of empire, by the way, deserve better than a stolen lie of clean. I deserve to be curved where I am curved, populated by the interspecies miracle of staying, because the speculative housing market push out in San Francisco and every other city I know, was hearing about it, what's going on here in Eugene, can only produce more thirst. It is predictable that we would be unquenchable. That's what happens when we sever our deepest relationships, when we murder our teachers for teaching us what we most need to learn. Once upon a time, I wore ice, and it made me who I am, and it melted into every pore, and the flow of it still overwhelms me. Once upon a time, my curves became a fertile place of welcome growth that could forever surprise me. I call on the high priestesses and the sages of all ages. I call on the displaced and the reaching. I call on my memory of spring, a queer symbiosis, an ever-changing love, a relationship that grows beautiful in the gaps of where we are. May it be so again. Another deep breath. This is called You and Me in the Cloud for Cheryl Y. Green. Oh, that's cool. Okay. You can see what I see. Okay. Yesterday morning, the moon shone through the clouds on me like a searchlight. It was giving, I will never leave you, I will always know you, nothing but death can keep me from you. Color purple, movie vibes. If I could, I would play hand clap games with the moon. I never get over how someone so far away and completely on her own schedule and ever changing always feels like my best friend as soon as I see her. Actually, when I put it that way, it makes complete sense because that's the type of friend I am to you. Randomly beaming in your face like you know where I've been all this time. It feels like the moon always finds me. And so yesterday morning, I jumped into the clouds. If you get on an airplane right before sunrise in Durham and fly west, you can slow the rate of change, right? Or is Earth just so multiple she stretches time? Because from here, the eastern cities look like galaxies. And then the Midwest slowly reveals her patchwork blanket of agricultural claims. And now this desert looks like a muted Mars. How many worlds are there? Trick question. The universe always makes more worlds. Today I learned that astronomers call the nearby galaxies birthing stars clouds, because from here they look like misty gatherings in the sky, making stars instead of rain. Can you imagine? When my mother said my head was always in the clouds, I wasn't even yet saying things like, hey, did you know that from the perspective of Durham, a galaxy looks like a cloud? From the perspective of the clouds, Durham looks like a galaxy? And couldn't astronomers have guessed that poets would come behind them to rescue all these metaphors or else critique them? I mean, who uses a phenomena of the sky as a metaphor for another phenomena of the sky? Unless sky is all you know. Who sells NFTs for crypto unless they plan to never continue to live on Earth? The 2 times my mentor Cheryl Y. Green scolded me were both related to the cloud. The first time was when I posted pictures of Cheryl and her new laptop on Facebook without asking. The second time was when she found out how much important information my partner Shangodare and I used to keep in Google Docs. Cheryl Y. Green, the great editor of The People, those people being Asada Shakur, June Jordan, Ntozake Shange, Lucille Clifton, Toni Kate Bambara, Alice Walker, Toni Morrison, and many more, knew something about discretion, about the dangers of instantaneous publication, like this essay when I first published it on my website and posted the link all over social media. And data storage. Not because she was a tech expert, but because she was a Black editor of Black writers who COINTELPRO had high on their list of people whose words might spark revolutions. They had to decide what they wanted to say about themselves and when. For example, it was Cheryl Green who stewarded Asada Shakur's first public statement to her community after she escaped the prison called the United States. She calculated when exactly, where exactly, we should first hear from our sister in exile, as Cheryl called her in Essence magazine. Cheryl helped make Essence magazine an incubator of stars in the 1970s and 80s. I think she made everyone a better, clearer writer. I have seen the manuscripts. I will say though, very little red pen on Toni Morrison's drafts, I'm just saying. But the real reason I know Cheryl's editor's eye, that was the name of her editing consulting company she made later in life, Editor's Eye. The reason I know Cheryl's I could transform writers is because she transformed me. And sometimes I wonder if the reason not enough people know Cheryl's name is because she was so careful not to leave too many traces. I went with Cheryl once to shred her documents, pounds and pounds of paper that we loaded up after cancer had already eaten through her shoulder. We took them to a truck somewhere in Harlem that would eat and spit out histories right in front of you. Truckloads of snow from some soft, pixelated planet. Am I an airhead for using social media apps that allow information about me to flow to government agencies and corporations through the checked boxes of terms and conditions? I am typing pages from my journal into digital perpetuity via airplane Wi-Fi when I'm 96% sure that Cheryl burned her journals before she died. How am I Cheryl's literary daughter? Is this merely a generational difference? Stars are born when clouds collapse. What they call star nurseries are like that picture that was up there before. They look like flaming clouds lit through some internal sunrise. And a new close gas formation called the Radcliffe wave is changing what astronomers think the shape of our galaxy is or ever was. They call the wave Radcliffe because Harvard astronomers saw it. And so shouldn't we think of the Radcliffe Institute of Advanced Studies? Oh, it stopped on the, listen, is it Cheryl doing it? Lord. Cheryl, I trust them. I have been writing down everything that you're saying, okay. Maybe it just has to reset. Oh, okay. All right, so they call the thing Radcliffe because the Harvard people saw it, so they're advertising in space. Okay, so we should think of the Radcliffe Institute of Advanced Study when we look at the sky. And maybe not think about how Harvard said the unknown mental capacity of women said women shouldn't be admitted to Harvard, even though Anne Radcliffe was one of the original donors to their scholarship program in the 1600s. A businesswoman who outlived her husband, Anne Radcliffe's contribution was recuperated through the short-lived women's college and the institute that replaced it. British Anne Radcliffe's lucrative 15th century investments put her in the position to be the first woman donor to Harvard. And what was there to invest in at that time, other than colonial projects linked to the transatlantic slave trade? I say the Radcliffe wave's oceanic referent is actually the Middle Passage, which means that if we were to see a star being born right now through an expensive Harvard telescope, stopped again. Okay. So I just have to touch this once in a while? I don't know.
I think so. Maybe just like turn this. Like,
Just do this? Or to click on this one? Okay. Which means that if we see a star being born right now through an expensive Harvard telescope, or more likely through their private servers, that star would have been born 8,800 years ago, long before the technological shift we call colonialism began. Long before that technological shift through which the speculative sale of people could fund astronomy research centuries later with interest. I can't say what any of this means from here. I am now data, aggregatable, and being reproduced even now by AI's brain. Which I guess means you don't need me, or that the interest in me I am generating in you right now will benefit whoever owns the AI application, where you will one day ask the chatbot to give me an essay in the style of Alexis Pauline Gumbs about clouds as clouds, and clouds as unborn stars, and clouds as galaxies, and clouds as archives. And it won't matter that you never knew how Cheryl died the night before her 70th birthday, or that you weren't there when I tried to record her life the last time I saw her, but instead we watched the clouds changing into colors I still can't describe over sunset through every window in her apartment. The clouds themselves, right there, and the clouds becoming more beautiful again, reflected in the Hudson River. I agree to the terms and conditions and post my ramblings online because I want you to know about Cheryl immediately. Because as Barbara and Beverly Smith said, we have no way of knowing whether we or our movement will survive long enough to become safely historical. Because I still remember what all my sister women of color bloggers taught me, which is that our brilliance can flood the system with alternative possibilities, even while capitalism learns to steal everything we are and everything we think we have. Or maybe it's because that great editor, who I really want to read this first draft, is dispersed out among you, and I miss her. But keep on treating me like the moon and saying you need to read exactly this, exactly today, because I love you so much that I will never be able to hide from the wolves or the advertisers. You will always be able to find me, out here, moon-faced, howling your name as if it could reclaim the stolen claims, name this whole universe for whoever you were light years before they gentrify this air. Every cloud in my eyes is a galaxy. Every breath is your birthday, you star. Another deep breath. Okay. 2 more vignettes, y'all. Sorry for all the delays. Or maybe I will skip one. Okay, this is, because I'm excited to talk with you all, you know? Okay, so this last one's called Notes of an Inverse Navel Gazer. It starts with a quote by Michio Kaku, a theoretical physicist. He says, "We know more about other planets than we do about the core of the Earth." I confess, as you just heard, I'm more likely to gaze at the moon than to watch the news. The moon is my luminescent belly button, and I'm studying it intently. But right now, the clouds are forming a screen, a shield, and the only thing out here shining is the street lamp. I get most of my news from you on the internet, and that's why it was the Instagram story of the visionary activist mama, Kate Shapiro, we also happened to go to high school together, that informed me that, did you all see this when this happened, like last year? The core of the Earth just stopped moving and changed directions. Y'all remember when that happened, like, as a news item? Wait, what? I typed in response. I know, she typed back in all caps with a wide-eyed emoji, but she typed it like 3 days later, which is my happy clue that Kate spends more time gazing at her adorable baby than she does checking Instagram messages, which is really good. Anyhow, this is how I ended up watching a clip of theoretical physicist Michio Kaku on a morning news show explaining to a bewildered anchor woman that we hardly know anything that's happening, in his words, right beneath our feet. Seismologists at Beijing University have been studying the core of the Earth by tremors that reach us at the surface. And after checking and rechecking years of data, they feel sure that the core of the Earth has stopped and is turning around. At least sure enough to publish it. What does that mean? In a reassuring voice, Kaku says it means maybe nothing, because we do not know anything. That was supposed to be reassuring to me. The seismologists suggest that maybe the core of the Earth just switches directions once every 70 years or so, and we hadn't noticed yet because we know more about other planets than the core of this Earth. At least that's better than imagining that the rotation shift in the solid core of Earth is a first step in a planetary orbit shift that will cause Earth to crash into Venus before I can achieve my goal of getting Audre Lorde's words in front of the eyes of every Black woman who currently gets her advice on Black womanhood from Steve Harvey or T.D. Jakes. So, maybe the core of the Earth just switches it up for balance. Like how our nostrils take turn being the main breather every 2 hours, a fact that also astounded me when I first learned it in yoga class. I felt like Michio Kaku was speaking directly to me and not subtweeting his colleagues in theoretical physics at all when he said we know more about other planets than we do about our own core. Just like we know more about outer space than we do about the oceans that sustain us. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was. It clicked. Oh, everyone else has been dissociating too. A few days ago, I was sitting in a very loud airport gate in Atlanta, talking on the phone with a Shoshone Two-Spirit doula, storyteller, author, Murphy Barney, when I said this out loud for the first time. I had made this secret divide between my spiritual practice and my physical practice, as if I meditate and then I work out. But I recently realized that the yoga and Pilates that I practice every morning, thanks to Yeshnomaya Padamsi, Lana Garland, and Mariana Castaneda, is a core part of my spiritual healing practice, a necessary practice of inviting spirit into my body. Because as a survivor of sexual violence and a person whose body has been met with racist, patriarchal, violent words, actions, and multiple scales of aggression since childhood, I have a long history of dissociation. I flee myself based on an early response to the message our intersecting systems of oppression reiterate over and over again. The message is, this body is not a safe place for love. The news brings us affirmations of this cruel conclusion every day. And so after my ancestral meditations and my breathing and my singing meditation and my dancing meditation, I stretch and breathe and get on the floor and try to do impossible Pilates moves that show me exactly which muscles are exhausted and strained from me not engaging my core. And then I give up and fall over and finally trust that what my core can do is enough, even if it's such a small movement that no one can see it. And what I am remembering with all my loud breathing and frequent flailing is that this body is the perfect place for love. And all my ancestors are here and ready to feel it. And I get it. I understand why we would rather look at other planets than our scary depth of home, especially since we are so complicit in her restlessness. And the billionaires are just master dissociators who excel at not feeling the pain of their impact on everyone whose labor they undervalue and the earth they've dug dry. So they make literal what we all do when we dissociate. These people actually fly off into space. I didn't realize until today that we let them do it because we generally believe along with them what I wake up to unlearn every day. The sad story that this is not a place where love can happen. It is though. That is what the core I am still learning to trust is teaching me. This is exactly where love happens. And that's why it matters that we're here. So do your core thing. Turn around, somersault backwards, fart from the depth of your abdominals, do whatever you need to do. Just know, I'm here, and I love you, and I could be anywhere, but I'm here. Another deep breath. And now I'm excited for the Q&A.
On campus and an organizer, I'm so honored to be here today with all of you and with Dr. Gumbs for this Q&A.
few questions, and then we'll transition to taking questions from the audience. If we want to, it's going to be a little, we'll pass the mic around as we're working with it. Yes, did you want to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Julie. I am a third-year PhD student in the philosophy department, and I'm stoked to be here.
All right, my question for you today, after reading and engaging with a lot of your work through this year and really connecting super deeply with it, it's been very guiding as I finish up my last year in school here.
Sorry, I'm so sorry, but could you put the mic closer to you so we can hear you better?
Thank you. So you've spoken a lot about the lineage of love that exists within us, driving us into the future and grounding us in the past, especially in relation to ancestors. I'm wondering which ancestors have felt close to you lately, and what have they been offering you?
It's always a cloud of witnesses over here, just to be honest about it. I feel a lot of ancestral intimacy. I feel very, very close. I feel my ancestors laughing also a lot, like very amused by just me living my life. They're like, what? But I appreciate their accompaniment. I am feeling very close to Cheryl Green, who I shared about. Feeling close to my dad. We have birthdays on consecutive days that are coming up soon, and he's an ancestor he just is very close. He's just right here, and honestly, he's saying stuff about all of you, but he's just that type of person. And I've been feeling, because I'm writing about June Jordan, I'm writing a book-length work about June Jordan and especially her relationship to land and land reform, and how that draws out of her mentorship from the civil rights and food justice warrior Fannie Lou Hamer. So I've been feeling very close to them because I've been researching, and I've been rereading so much of June Jordan's work and working with her archives. So there's that closeness, and our need for her right now is so palpable to me, and also my frustration with everything she already said that I wish had been acted on decades ago. That's very present with me. I could go on all day, but is there anyone else I especially want to name in this moment? Maybe a lady who gave me these earrings in African dance class. After I told her I like your earrings, and she literally took them off and gave them to me. Must be very close. And my grandparents, because I was just in Anguilla before I went to St. Martin, where I was at the Caribbean Studies Association before I came directly here. So yeah, they all feel very close right now. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. Okay, so you have a lot of somatics in your work. You draw much on uplifting the ancestors, the critical figures that you've named, but also that show up in your work. And you create an archive for the future that we're trying to bring into being, and the future that we're also trying to displace or combat at the same time. And you're working a lot with the earth. Black feminist lessons from marine animals.
They black.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm wondering, I resonate a lot with your work, but I also do a lot of organizing on the inside with imprisoned folks. And I'm wondering what you hope for, or how you might construct your work to account for folks who are in the inside, and how you bring, what you hope your work inspires in them, how you can reach them, combating those conditions of dehumanization and de-earthing, right? Being in those cells and conditions. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that beautiful abolitionist question. This is something that I think about often. My first writing workshop I ever facilitated was in a youth prison with kids the same age that I was when I was 14. And one of the things that I learned there that stays with me in my work is that one of the things about language is that it moves. Now, of course, things are banned, things are censored. You know, in my continued work with folks who organize within prison, but also with other abolitionists, the power of our words is something that's known by those who would want to keep us separate from our fellow community members who are captured in prison right now. But it has been part of my thought about what does it mean to share and what does it mean to remember that we can actually use language to find each other. Since then, it's been part of the vision and it's been part of the heartbreak to stay in collaboration with communities of accountability inside. I think that one of the most important things to remember is that people in prison are organizing and are the leaders of the abolitionist movement, and to be listening for that and to be acknowledging that and to then be asking the question, how can I be of service? And so it remains a question, you know, and then of course it makes me not the best person to even answer the question. But I do think that every abolition is interconnected. You know, there's a scene in a book I wrote called Archive After the End of the World, and it says we close the schools and the prisons on the same day. And so I think it's also important for us to understand that if we can see the carceral and colonial logic of any institution, we can understand that it exists in every institution. Not to say that everyone's experience is the same, or that anyone's interchangeable, or that we don't have to pay attention to people who are institutionalized in very different ways than we are, but to understand that along those lines of complicity, but also along the lines of potential compassion and collaborative organizing, we are learning the same lesson about what it means to be separate from Earth through those institutions. So yeah, there's more I could say, but I really appreciate that question. That's really beautiful framing. Are y'all just gonna go back and forth?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're going to turn it over to the audience now. Raise your hands high, and I think Mina is going to run around and bring the mic to you.
Actually, do you want to just keep the question?
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello, thank you so much for your talk, first of all. So my question, I guess, goes along the lines of abolition as well. And I did a reading recently about Robin Kimmerer, and they kind of talk about the struggle between being a scientist and having to maintain objectivity, and then thereby like objectifying the subjects, or as language would treat them as objects, but also the need for connection and more than human empathy. And then I know in your work, we've talked about the rhetoric, the racist rhetoric that is inherent in science. And so I often wonder if science as a whole should be completely restructured, and how we could even go ahead. So yeah, no, and I love that because I really do think that we just completely have to uproot it. And I always want to hear from other researchers, like how do you think these pillars should be rebuilt?
Okay, so I'm not gonna be able to repeat the question as beautifully as you said. Did the question get on the, okay. Thank God. So, short answer, yes. What helped me was to this? I don't know. Maybe you already know this. Was that Nanny of the Maroons? Nanny is a hero for Jamaicans, but for like decolonial people all over the world. Nanny was a Maroon leader, and she fought off British colonialism and enslavement with a collective practice for a very long time. And so the Maroons to this day call Nanny the great scientist. And what they mean when they say Nanny is the great scientist, which is in the present tense, even though Nanny has died many, not before this century and the last century, is that she understood how to be in relationship with life around her, and she understood how to listen beyond death. That's what made her the great scientist in their terms of what it is to be a great scientist. And so now that's my standard for what a scientist is. And I think that to create something like a decolonial practice of scientific inquiry or a decolonial scientific method, those examples could be at the center of that. Like we could actually look at, Nanny is one example, and I happen to be of Jamaican ancestry, but we could think about actual decolonial warriors and their relationship to what it means to know, what it means to be in relation in ways that actually did subvert literal colonialism, right? So like not as a metaphor, but as a practice that has a history, and that we do have ancestors in many contexts who were great scientists, like Nanny was or is. And what would it mean? What would it mean to center that work there? Because I agree with you that I think that otherwise we reproduce the colonizing impulse that we need to know in order to dominate, and then the ways that we be knowing, our epistemologies reproduce domination.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I was curious how you would describe your spirituality and how it connects with your work.
Thank you. I'm a great scientist. No, that's not the primary way I identify. I identify as a queer Black feminist, and Black feminism is my spiritual practice. And so, for me, that's a form of, are people screaming somewhere? Everybody okay though, right? Okay. Like, we can't just sit here while the people go, okay. Oh, they're screaming with joy because of their beautiful voices. Okay, great. I'm just saying, you know. We never know when it's time we're gonna have to go help our people out because something's happening, so, okay. I'm also listening for that, but thank you. I much prefer that that's what's happening. Yeah, so it's a mode of listening. It's a mode of what Black feminism is it's now I just think they're cheering for all the Black feminists of our history, our Black feminist presidents, as are you. What Black feminism does is it refuses separation while acknowledging in every breath that everything is connected and we're in the practice of acting accordingly. And to me, that's a spiritual question. What is it that allows me to act in the reality that I'm not separate from people who have died? What does it mean to act in accordance with the fact that I'm not separate from people who are directly harmed by a country that I paid taxes into, right? What does it mean to know that and yet be living in a reality that's constructed as if we are separate? Which means I'm saying that Black feminism requires a rigorous faith and it requires, Audre Lorde has this poem called Call, where she says, we are learning by heart what has never been taught. There's a humility and a surrender in trying to embody something that I have not experienced in this body. And so for me, that is a spiritual question. And the way that I practice it draws on a lot. It draws on ancient traditions of just people breathing, right? Like we did. It draws on African traditional or religious understandings of ancestor reverence. It draws on queer ecstatic practice of being embodied and being in grief and being in celebration and maybe sometimes screaming a lot. So yeah, I think that the other thing about my spiritual practice is that it's always like telling me what it is that I didn't realize it was. So it will never be contained by my words, but my words are an offering towards continuing to be present in that way. Thank you for that beautiful question. It stopped again? It started again?
Am I testing?
Would you just like to repeat the question that is asked?
Yes, I'll repeat the question.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Gumbs. Yeah, it's up. We're good.
Great.
I really appreciate what you had to say about research as an act of colonial violence. As somebody who is working on a dissertation right now, I think about this often. And I wonder for you what that reconciliation process was like or continues to be, given what it is to, be in an institution, and also, if you're gonna have that PhD, if you're gonna have DR, anything like that, right, there are all sorts of institutional requirements. And I find myself like coming into this wall where I just walk away from the whole thing because I don't know what else to do. Yeah, so just curious how you reconcile that within yourself.
And the thing did catch your question. Okay. So y'all are so articulate and thorough with these questions that I could never reproduce them, but I'm so glad I get to experience them. So, yes. I think the first thing to remember is that we can walk away because we are free. And that means that if we choose to be in relationship with particular practices or rituals, like a dissertation is a ritual. It's something that gains its power through repetition, right? It's something that has gained its value through intergenerational practice of it and reproduction of it, like any other ritual. And if we choose to be a part of that, then I think the rigor comes in relationship. What is our relationship to whatever it is? If it's the archive of our inquiry, if it's the experiment, if it's the possibility, if it's the history, the legacy, the historiography. That question of relationship is, if we don't ask the question, is a default colonial relationship. And it will reproduce violence. That's the default mode, right? That doesn't mean that's the only possible relationship you can have to something that you would care enough about that you've been this frustrated and you still try to do it, right? I don't know what it is, but I can tell you care about it because you asked that question and you're still engaged. So that question of relationship, you have so many opportunities for that to come up in the practice, right? It happens in relationship with committee. I remember when I told my beloved committee, I really do love these people, that my relationship to literary historiography is not that I'm trying to basically have some kind of patricide, right? Like kill the people that came before me because I'm the new smarter one, right? And I was like, I know that you all aren't training me to do that. And they were like, oh, well, when you say it like that, like it was one of those moments of like, oh, well, maybe if we don't say something about our relationship, there are all of these things that are presumed that we understand our colonial practices. So I'm not saying like we just ask ourselves once what's our relationship, or we just like put a paragraph in the beginning, like this is my positionality, like the cultural anthropologists do. I'm saying that we are constantly in the question of how are we related, and moving through the work in relation, and sometimes how to be in the most ethical relationship I can be in does mean I need to walk away from something. Or it might mean I need to stay in something that I might feel like walking away from, right? It's a question that's not a once and for all answer either. It's a question that comes up again and again, and then we have the opportunity to notice, oh, maybe I bypassed that question of relationship, or maybe I didn't even realize there was that default there until I did, right? And so I think there can be humility and compassion in that too, because the other thing that I'm trying to unlearn is that the doing it right thing is also a colonial reproduction, right? So I can't tell you how to do it right, is the part of the reality, but I can say that asking that question about what is my relationship to this is, there's vulnerability in it. It can feel disruptive. I don't think it actually delays the work more. I think not thinking about the relationship, but avoiding it because it actually has a relationship that's not in alignment with why you're here is what delays people the most. But it can feel frustrating to be like, well, because I made this proposal, this prospectus, I had this idea that I could articulate then, and now you've been transformed hopefully you've been transformed by the work, right? If you haven't been transformed by the work, well, I guess you might as well just publish the prospectus because that's what you thought and that's what you're gonna think, So I think the exciting thing about any long-term intellectual process and any research process is that we will be transformed. We will be in relationship in a way that we couldn't have imagined before, otherwise we already would have been in that relation. That's what's really exciting to me about it. And that is my experience of this dissertation project that is about how am I in relationship to these Black feminist literary ancestors, which is an ongoing question, and it's a question that's not about only how do I write about them on the page, it's a question of like, who reads this first? It's a question about like, what are the ways that it's shareable and that it's shared? And what happens with it? What are the things that I want to be property of the institution where I got my PhD, and what are the things that I want to protect from that? All of those questions are part of the rigor, and also I think part of the point, of staying in that kind of structured relationship, that you definitely will bump against all of these things and all of these necessary opportunities to question your relationship in ways that you might not just encounter if you were thinking these thoughts outside of the constriction, let's call it the poetic constriction of the PhD process.
We have time for about 2 more questions.
Hi, Professor Gumbs. Thank you for gracing us with your presence and your science. I value it. I think you have touched on this throughout the clouds that you have brought. But I'm wondering if you kind of spoke about the rituals to be present, right, with actually the people of Gaza, but everyone on this earth who is suffering. And so in that sense also, if we think of that in the context of earth as a relationship, what are perhaps some of the practices, some of your rituals of repair, the rituals of replenishment that is also indispensable for the earth? Because sometimes also I feel that is what we are also lacking at this moment, in which devastation and destruction are so intense. And perhaps besides saying, what are your one practices or rituals of repair, maybe what is one that you would like to learn in the future as well?
I love that. And this also caught your question? Okay. Rituals of repair. So I think that, I never know if I'm projecting onto you because I just feel very related to you. But I'm thinking that when you say rituals of repair, you're talking about repair in relationship to other people I'm in relationship to, and also like restoration of myself doing the work. You're talking about it in both of those ways? Okay. So I didn't just make that up. Great. So I think that the first one, thinking about reparation, thinking about the possibility of repair, it's an acknowledgement of complicity, right? To say that there's something that I could do towards trying to make it right? And it's important to acknowledge that aspect of relationality. And as you also said, it can feel so overwhelming because here I am doing everything I could think of and it's so not right? And so I think that it's been important to understand that while we are all in relation, we are all complicit, we are all a part of everything that happens as a part of this earth, in fact, because of that, it's not a scale of individuality, right? And so I think that what can be exhausting and what I've seen lead to a lot of burnout, and what I've experienced myself as burnout, is this thing where I am trying to honor a profound collectivity with the colonial tools in which I must be an individual making a difference, right? And that don't work. I mean, it has never worked for me, so I don't see it working. And that is in itself an unlearning, right? So then, at the same time, I am left with this scale of like drinking this water when the children of Gaza do not have clean access to clean water, or water in the ways that I talked about it earlier is what connects all of us, but is absolutely not we're not in an equitable relationship with water on this planet. So what do I actually do? I mean, I said some of what I actually do, y'all. I'm up early in the morning, I'm singing, I'm dancing, I'm listening for my ancestors, I'm breathing, I'm trying to do Pilates. I fail at Pilates every single day. I don't think those are things, I'm like, how do you lift your leg with your muscle behind your neck or whatever? Like, that's impossible. And it's so helpful because like I fail on every scale, And that doesn't mean that that I don't have dignity, or I'm not worthy to be on this earth, or I'm not a manifestation of love. In fact, quite the opposite in terms of the way that love works. And so part of what those practices I do offer me is the opportunity to remember that and unlearn, again, what my colonial education has taught me, which is that life is achievement. And if you're not achieving, you're not worthy of life. That is a narrative that is a profoundly American narrative, and also a colonizing narrative that I can see imperially across the planet. So it's very renewing. It's so renewing to try to kayak in the ocean, like all these things that I can't do. It's renewing to try, and to then be in a situation where I am in the spiritual reminder, the humbling reminder of the fact that I will only ever be a small part of something much, much bigger. And that's also the good news, And this is part of what Audre Lorde teaches, because there's a part of me that is like, I just wish I could say, stop. And all genocide was stop. Of course I wish that would happen. But I've been saying stop. And what Audre Lorde insisted on was, just because the power we wish we had is not the power that we actually have, to have our individual, which is also a colonial fantasy of dominion, everybody got to do what I say, right? Doesn't mean that I'm not still responsible for saying it and continuing to be in that relationship of trying to live another way and mostly failing, but learning so much and actually being able to practice like you all did with this longest lasting encampment that you all had here, actually living in a different relation that lifted up the fact that you're in relation with people that you can't physically touch and you're being kept separate from. And that is an embodiment of that relation, you know? So, a practice of repair that I wish I could do in the future. That's a great question, because I always be thinking of stuff. That's why my morning routine is like many hours long. I'm like, you do a good thing you don't work for nobody, because you spend a lot of time doing these things that you made up. So I don't even know, like, if I make up something else, but maybe, I think that maybe actually some more time with my hands in the earth would be a practice of repair for me. Yeah, that's the one I'm dreaming of. Thank you for asking.
Thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us and given us today, Dr. Gumbs. It's such a privilege to have you here. I have a question that I think draws on a lot of things people have already been asking, but I wanted to acknowledge that it's week 10, it's spring term, there's many of us in this room, myself included, that are about to graduate, and simultaneously that's exciting, and it's a bit scary, and it's disorienting, and we have been held by this institution which is in so many ways violent, and I'm sure all of us in this room have been trying really hard not to reproduce that violence, and simultaneously it has held us and carried us and given us structure and organized our lives and oriented us, and as we leave here we're entering a world that is particularly disorienting, intentionally so in so many ways. And I found in Undrowned your description of dorsal practices so beautiful to think with and carry with me, and I'm really curious if you have possibly some advice for us graduating and everyone else in this room who's stepping out into a disorienting world, how to find those dorsal practices when they can feel a little bit foggy and far away.
Yeah, if you just do this one thing, you'll never be afraid again. I'm just kidding. I know that's not what you're asking, but I also wish, I wish we just did this one thing. I would do it, but I didn't find it yet. But dorsal practices, when it seems fun. What did it get Megan's question? Okay. It's so experimental, So I think that to create dorsal practices, and for people who haven't read Undrowned, I have dorsal fin envy, and dorsal fins, dolphins evolve their dorsal fins through the evolutionary process, but what dorsal fins do is that they have a stabilizing impact, right? And they are very helpful when your environment is liquid, to have something that stabilizes you so that you can move through it intentionally. So when Megan talks about a dorsal practice, that's what that is referring to. And so some of mine are Pilates and the singing and the meditating and all of these things. mostly writing is what allows me to be present in a way where I am able to be intentional and not just reacting to all of what's going on around. So developing dorsal practices, for me, it's been very experimental. I think about it as a queer thing of like, what is my longing? Like, what's the longing that I have? And especially, I mean, maybe there's something that somebody else is asking me to do, but usually it's like, nobody's asking me to do that. Nobody was asking me to write about these marine mammals every day, like for hundreds of days. Nobody cared what I thought about the ice and the Jennifer Lopez and the people with the water on the, like, nobody asked me to do that, right? But I had this. And so I think that it's studying of what is that desire that I can't even necessarily explain it. It's not something that's immediately co-optable into whatever it is that I'm in relationship to, if it's this country or whatever it is that I'm reproducing. What is it that I just want to do? And I'm an everyday person, so like, what is it that I'm interested enough to do? And there's a scale that I can do it at, where I could do it every day. That could be an infinite number of things. And also, not everybody is like me. I don't know. My mother, I was talking to me this morning, she was like, as if she's not the one I watch do things every day, by the way. Because she would like read her devotional every day, and she would do this like outlandish aerobics tape every day. I watched her growing up do things every day, and I was like, oh, the things you want to do, you do them every day. But now she, this morning, is like, you're such a disciplined person. How do you do this stuff every day? And I'm like, I learned it from watching you, Mom. Anyway, so I'm not saying the way that I practice, which is like a vitamin, like a scale of something that I can do every single day, and I am so repetitive. And that might have to do with my learning style, that might have to do with my neurodivergence. I'm not saying that. I am saying that repetition is powerful, and I know that, you know, this institution that we're inside of, it exists because of repetition. There's things that people have to do every day so that this continues to exist. So anything that we want to exist, repetition is a really powerful aspect of how that exists. All I'm saying is that there could be something, like I just said, I want to put my hands in the dirt more. I haven't quite found the way to have that be something that I can do more as an individual practice. I'm in it as a collective practice, and I'm like part of a community farm, and I'm great at when somebody's like, girl, go weed that, and I'm like, yes, I'm on it. But when it comes to having an idea for like a plant I want to be in relationship with, it's something I long for, but I'm not there yet. I think it's just asking these questions. What I ask myself is, what is it that I'm longing for? I don't have to understand why, it makes sense. And what's the scale that I can engage it every day? And then I start engaging it every day, and then how do I feel about that? Do I feel like, I don't like doing this, I don't want to do this every day anymore? Do I feel like I'm doing this in a way that's overwhelming, and this is not the scale which is sustainable for me every day? You know, for me, it hasn't really ever been like, oh, I had this great idea, now I'm just doing it every day for the rest of my life. It's more trial and error, you know, emphasis on the error. Unfortunately, that's the bad news, but it's also really the good news. And so those of you who are graduating, I think I should be a commencement speaker because of my approach to this, but I'm not. I think that
Not yet.
I'm not yet. But I know people's graduation is tonight also. But I think it's just this curiosity, and you could journal about it. Also, I have this course on my website called Stardust and Salt that's about daily creative practice, where you actually have a video of me every day being like, blah, 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 something cosmic about the stars. You're gonna do this practice, here's a prompt. So there's also that if you want to do that. But which is also just a structured way of you choose some practice that you want to try, and then you experience what it's like to try it, and you make decisions around that based on what you notice. about yourself trying to do it. Yep. I'm not concise, but I really mean every word that I'm saying.
Thank you all so much for being here. I would say forever and ever and ever, but scheduling unfortunately will kick us out. So yeah, thank you again for being here. Let's have another round of applause. As was just mentioned, the People's graduation is happening now out on the Women's Memorial Quad. We have food catered by Cafe Soraya, which is Palestinian owned, and our commencement will start at 6:30. Hope to see you all there.